Revealed. The incredible transformation of a hidden beauty as the Alpha King discovers her true worth. In the heart of Maplewood, where every smile told a story and every child was known by name, Sarah was like a fierce storm concealed beneath a serene facade. At 32, she wore her battles proudly, weathering the unyielding tide of judgment as a single mother of two. Early mornings at the diner were a blur of pancakes and coffee, laughter vibrating through the air. But the weight of her situation hung like an anchor at the back of her mind. Every dollar earned was a promise delivered to Emily and Jake, a whisper of hope to a better life. Still, glances from some townsfolk felt like knives, cutting deep with whispers of inadequacy. Then one sunny afternoon, the doors of the diner swung open. In stepped Jack, a sharp-dressed newcomer with city boy charm, and a smile that could light up the darkest corners of a room. His presence rippled through the diner as he ordered a slice of pie, an ordinary gesture that felt monumental. When their eyes met, Sarah felt her ordinary life flash before her bills to pay, sleepless nights and societal judgment. Yet here came this stranger, seeing her not as just a waitress, but as a determined mother. He smiled warmly, a connection that took her breath away, but it was a fragile thread. Sarah's heart soared. Yet her chest tightened as the reality of their worlds crashed together like thunder. She was battling not just her judgments but those of the town, and the distance between their lives felt insurmountable. As Jack began to weave himself into her life, she could feel the stirrings of hope mixed with doubt. Could a single mother stand alongside a wealthy outsider with friends rolling their eyes? Could they bridge the gap between their starkly different realities? Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As the Maplewood Fair approached, excitement electrified the air, but tension brewed beneath the surface. Rumors of her past began to spread like wildfire, whispering doubts into the ears of the townspeople. Sarah could feel the weight of their judgment, their conversations piercing through her strong facade. Looking over at Emily and Jake's innocent faces at the fair, she felt the flicker of courage build inside her. They deserved more than the narrow perceptions of others. On the night of the fair, beneath starlit skies, the crowd gathered for a game that challenged everyone's morals. As Sarah stood tall, the lingering glares of judgment shifted to her, and she could feel herself falter. But in that moment, ignited by the fierce love she held for her children, she faced the crowd head-on. "This is who I am," she cried, her voice breaking through the silence. "I am more than your whispers, more than societal measures. I am worthy." With hearts racing and eyes wide, the town collectively held its breath. Would they finally see her? Would Jack stand by her side when whispers turned to scoffs? As her voice echoed in the night, the tension hung heavy. The fair lights twinkled around them, but uncertainty clung like fog. Could Sarah overcome the biases that shadowed her? Or would the warmth of love be extinguished by the chill of societal expectations? The story was far from over as emotions spiraled, and the question lingered in the air. What would tomorrow hold for the hidden beauty of Maplewood? The air crackled with a blend of anticipation and dread as Sarah stood before the crowd, her heart echoing in her chest. She could sense the curiosity of her neighbors, the familiar faces that had turned into masks of judgment. The moment stretched out, tangible and heavy, thick with the tension of unspoken words. Could she really do this? Jack, standing off to the side, shifted uncomfortably. His sharp features were a mix of admiration and concern. He stepped forward slightly, the intention to support her clear in his eyes, but would it be enough? Would he, a city man with a polished life, fully grasp the courage it took for her to speak her truth? The crowd murmured, a low hum filled with disbelief and intrigue. Sarah took a deep breath, feeling the warmth of the fair lights against her skin. "I've spent years hiding, letting others define who I am," she continued, her voice unwavering. "But I'm done. I'm not ashamed of my past, and I will not let it dictate my future or my children's." As she spoke, she could feel the wind shift, blowing away the chains of doubt that had hung heavy around her. The children's laughter nearby tugged at her heart, grounding her to what truly mattered. Emily and Jake were her motivation, her reason to rise above. They were her past, present, and future, and she wouldn't drag them down with her insecurities. More murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some of the townsfolk began to nod, the acceptance shining through. Others, however, couldn't shake their skepticism. They squirmed visibly, clinging to their notions of propriety. But Sarah's words were like sunlight breaking through clouds, illuminating the dim corners of doubt in some, while igniting the animosity in others. "Look around you," Sarah beckoned, gesturing toward the town square bustling with families. "We're all in this together. We all have stories painted with shades of struggle, pain, and hope. I know I haven't lived the way most of you expect, but that doesn't mean I'm less deserving of your respect. Embrace our differences." The energy shifted again, the internal battle within the crowd evident as some faces softened while others hardened. Jack's gaze remained locked on her, a fierce protector behind his business attire. In that moment, she noticed his admiration and belief in her, an anchor that provided strength against the tide of uncertainty. It delighted her to know he believed in her when she almost didn't believe in herself. As the night wore on, Sarah felt an electric shift in the air. A ripple of courage echoed back from some of the townsfolk, inspired courage spreading amongst them, while a few looked away, unable to meet her gaze. It wasn't a total victory, but it was a start, a glimpse of understanding and a bridge between worlds. When the final notes of the evening's music rang out, Sarah could finally breathe. The crowd began to disperse, some breaking away in quiet contemplation, while others walked up to her, tentative but hopeful. She saw familiar faces offering timid smiles, tentative steps forward in her direction. Perhaps change was beginning to take root. But in the depth of her heart, a lingering worry whispered that Jack's world was still far removed from hers. As she turned to face him, that familiar doubt crept back in. Would this newfound confidence be enough to overcome the weight of their differences? Would he still see her as worthy in the harsh light of reality? Just then, a breeze swept through the night, stirring leaves and carrying away remnants of doubt. Sarah swallowed hard, looking deep into Jack's starlit eyes. The unresolved tension between them shimmered, thick as the darkness surrounding them, yet brighter like the promise of dawn. What would it take for her to truly step into the light, for them both to thrive? As she stood there, heart racing with the possibility of acceptance, a new question brewed. What would happen when they faced the challenges of their very different lives together? Jack took a tentative step closer, his eyes searching Sarah's face for answers. In that glimmering night under the thrumming stars, she could see the worry curling at the corners of his mouth. Yet there was something else, something deeper resting in his gaze. It was hope, mixed with admiration, and a hint of determination. "Sarah," he began, his voice low, almost drowned by the receding crowd. The warmth of his presence soothed her, but also ignited a new set of nerves. "I wanted to tell you that your words, they struck a chord. You inspired them." The sincerity in his voice wrapped around her, a blanket against the chill of doubt. "You have no idea how brave that was." "Brave?" She repeated, the word foreign on her tongue. Did she really feel brave? Maybe it was just raw desperation, the need to escape the shadows they had both danced in. "I just wanted to be honest. For once." Jack leaned closer, the gap between them narrowing. "That honesty, it's powerful. I know it's hard, but trust me, you're not just redefining yourself. You're changing this entire town, Sarah." The faint whispers of the crowd began to fade, replaced by a heartbeat, their heartbeat sinking in that heavy moment of truth. "Maybe," she said, more to herself, "but how can I hold on to that when the doubts loom larger than the acceptance?" "Doubts will always exist, but so will the progress you've made." "You've touched their hearts tonight," he said, determination glimmering in his eyes. "That counts for something. It shows you the power of your story." Sarah could feel her conviction wavering, shattered under the scrutiny of unhealed wounds and unresolved thoughts. "But what if they turn against me? What if they don't accept me as?" Jack's expression softened, an unwelcome vulnerability cracking through his polished exterior. "We'll face that together. I want to be there for you, for your children, if you let me." The finality of his words hung in the air, heavy with promise. For a moment, time suspended. Sarah's heart raced as her thoughts collided with the urge to reach out, grasp the heart that seemed to beat in sync with hers. But fear tightened its grip, spinning scenarios in her mind once filled with ridicule, isolation, and the harshness of judgment. She inhaled deeply, feeling the tangled threads of their lives intertwine. Could she lean into the possibilities he offered without losing herself? The shadows of uncertainty loomed as she glanced around, noticing the first handful of townsfolk who dared to approach her. Their smiles were shy, almost tentative, like newly sprouted flowers stretching toward the sun. It gave her the tiniest glimmer of hope, a thread pulling her toward a light she almost believed in. But her heart tightened again with the weight of reality. What if I'm not worth it? The words slipped out before she could catch them, revealing a fear she had kept buried deep. Sarah, Jack whispered, the warmth in his tone undeniable. Every story is worth sharing, especially the ones that come from the heart. You deserve this happiness, acceptance, and love. You deserve to be seen. Before she could respond, another familiar voice broke through the gentle cocoon they had formed. It was Emily, her daughter, rushing to her side with wide, innocent eyes. Mom, did you see? People are smiling at you. The child's excitement wrapped around Sarah like a hug, bringing warmth that countered her fears. A smile crept onto Sarah's face, genuine and bright. They really are, aren't they? The late beams of fair lights twinkled around them like stars, and suddenly everything felt possible. But then her gaze flickered back to Jack, and a new wave of uncertainty swirled within her. As he reached out a hand toward her, the challenge remained. Can she embrace both the past and the future, knowing the ramifications that they might carry? With newfound strength bubbling beneath the surface, Sarah took a step toward the unknown. Would the path ahead illuminate her journey or plunge her into darkness? Just then, the stillness around them resonated with unspoken questions, leaving everything in suspension. Would she dare step forward and trust what lay ahead, or would fear drag her back into the shadows? As Sarah stood there, heart pounding, a rush of emotions surged within her. The warmth of her daughter's words still lingered, yet they fought against the intensity of her fear. She could sense Jack's presence, a steady anchor in a tumultuous sea. But would that anchor hold? Mom, can we go talk to them? Emily's bright eyes sparkled with hope, the innocence of her youth igniting something within Sarah. With a tentative nod, Sarah took Emily's hand, feeling the small, trusting grip of her daughter grounding her. Jack stepped in beside them, an unspoken pact forming between the three of them. They approached the small group of townsfolk that had gathered, and Sarah's breathing quickened. Each face reminded her of the judgment she had faced not just as a single mother, but as someone who dared to voice her truth. To see you up there tonight, Sarah, it was brave, said Martha, a woman with graying hair and kind eyes. You gave us all something to think about. Her smile was warm, almost motherly, cutting through Sarah's fog of doubt. Yeah, you made my dad realize how wrong he was to judge you, chimed in Ben, a teenager who had once looked down at her. He said he's sorry for making you feel like you didn't belong. The openness in his voice was refreshing, like a breath of fresh air, and for a brief moment, Sarah felt the edges of her anxiety soften as more people stepped forward, sharing their support. Laughter echoed around them. But then the whispers of apprehension crept back in. What if this was just a fleeting moment? What if they turned again as they had in the past? See, Mom? Emily beamed, her tiny face lit up with joy. They really like you. Yes, they do for now, Sarah murmured, her heart wrestling with the contradictions swirling within. Was she ready to embrace this newfound acceptance? Or was it too good to be true? Jack's hand brushed against hers, a silent reminder that she wasn't alone. Remember, he said softly, you are not who they think you are. You're more than their judgments. You're stronger, braver. Whatever happens, I'm here. Each word resonated deeply, weaving a thread of courage through her heart. In that moment, a flicker of determination ignited. You're right, she replied, her voice steadier than before. I'm done hiding. It's time for me to stand tall. The embrace of her words hung in the air, palpable. But even as she spoke, the weight of trepidation loomed close. What would happen when the excitement faded? What if tomorrow brought a storm? Jack leaned closer, sensing her uncertainty. Whatever comes, we face it together. No more hiding. You are worthy, Sarah, even when it feels hard to believe. Suddenly the atmosphere shifted. A nearby voice broke through the triumphant echo of support. What's this about? Is this the same Sarah who? An old acquaintance stepped forward, skepticism dripping from her tone. The subtle jab brought the warmth down to an icy chill, causing a ripple of unease to dart through the group. "Let her speak," Martha interjected, her voice rising above the murmurs, a fierce advocate emerging in the conversation. Sarah's stomach knotted as all eyes turned to her. Jack's supportive presence beside her felt like a lifebuoy, but panic threatened to drown her. How could she truly fight past old judgments and perceptions? In that moment, Sarah realized her next move could redefine everything. Would she confront the shadows of her past or allow fear to render her speechless? The decision loomed, as heavy as the collective anticipation surrounding her. She inhaled deeply and opened her mouth, ready to reclaim her narrative. Would she find her voice, or would she let doubt echo back? Sarah took a deep breath, her heart racing like a drum in her chest. She could feel the weight of all those eyes on her, their unspoken judgments hanging in the air. Emily squeezed her hand tighter, her small fingers reminding Sarah that she wasn't alone in this. Jack's presence was a steady force beside her, but something primal stirred in her gut, begging her to cave in and retreat. The tension hung thick until Sarah finally drew on her courage, her voice trembling but determined. "I know who I am," she began, surprising herself with the strength behind her words. "I'm not defined by your opinions or what you think I've done. I am a good mother. I am a good friend. I am more than the mistakes of my past." For a moment, silence enveloped the crowd, and Sarah wasn't sure if she should continue. But then she caught Martha's encouraging nod, and it breathed new life into her voice. "I've spent too long letting fear keep me quiet, letting shame wrap around me like a heavy cloak. But no longer. I want to be part of this community, not just as someone you know, but as someone you trust." As she spoke, a wave of emotions washed over her: hope, fear, determination. She glanced at Emily, whose eyes shone bright with pride. Jack's presence felt even more solid, as if he had planted himself firmly between her and the judgments that threatened to pull her down. "Most importantly, I want my daughter to see a mother who stands tall, who fights back against fear," Sarah continued, her eyes scanning the crowd. "If I'm going to teach her strength, I have to show it. I won't hide behind my insecurities. Not from you, not from anyone." Again the room held its breath. Moments ticked by, each one pregnant with possibility. She glimpsed uncertain faces soften, and something within her shifted. This was her truth, and it felt liberating to finally voice it out loud. "Sarah, that familiar skeptical voice broke through the quiet again. A woman named Janet stepped forward, her arms crossed defensively. "You can't just erase what happened. It's not that simple." Sarah felt the tautness in her chest tighten again, like a rubber band drawn to its breaking point. This was the moment that could unravel everything. But instead of sinking under the weight of Janet's words, she held her ground. "You're right. It's not that simple. But every day I choose to move forward. Every day I choose to believe that my past doesn't define my future." The air shifted, excitement and tension melded together. She chastised herself inwardly. This was bigger than just her fight. It was about all of them, about breaking chains made from whispered gossip and past mistakes. In that moment it became clear. Maybe she could be a force for change, not just for herself but for others too. Could she inspire others to share their struggles? Jack's hand found hers again, grounding her, encouraging her further. "Don't let doubt creep back in," he whispered, his voice barely above a hush yet full of strength. "Martha, Ben, you all talked about how I made you think differently. What if we all shared our stories?" she proposed, her heart racing with hope and fear of rejection. "What if we met each other as truths instead of avoiding them? Maybe it's time for all of us to heal." For an instant, disbelief flickered across their faces. But slowly, as if reacting to a spark, murmurs spread through the crowd. They had made it this far. Maybe they could go further. "Sarah," Martha began, her eyes brimming with quiet admiration. "I think that sounds wonderful." Before Sarah could respond, Janet scoffed, "Let us not kid ourselves. You really think everyone will join in?" But Sarah held her ground, fueled by newfound conviction. "Maybe I'm just one person, but it starts somewhere. Will you stand with me? Or will you let the past keep us all stuck?" Silence rested between them, heavy with anticipation. Sarah's chest tightened again, waiting for an answer that might change everything. And the question lingered in the air like an echo. Would her plea resonate or fade into silence? Would her desire to uproot fear and embrace acceptance shine through, or was she still destined to fight shadows alone? The stakes had never felt higher. A deep breath filled the room, as if the crowd collectively suspended time. The echoes of Sarah's words danced in the silence, a fragile but potent call to arms. She held her breath, feeling the weight of 1,000 unseen expectations and past regrets press against her. Then slowly John stepped forward. His normal swagger was muted, replaced with a thoughtful demeanor. "You're right, Sarah," he said, his voice steady, carrying a calm that cut through the tension. "I've made my fair share of mistakes too. It's not every day we admit that." There was a ripple of surprise in the crowd, faces turning, eyes wide. John, the life of every party, stood open and raw. A spark ignited within Sarah. Maybe, just maybe, this was the moment they all began to peel back their insecurities. She watched as others in the crowd shifted uneasily. Hopeful glances exchanged across the sea of uncertainty. If John could acknowledge his struggles, could they all? "It takes guts to be vulnerable," someone quietly chimed from the back. It was a man she didn't know well, gentle in voice yet firm in belief. "We all carry burdens that weigh us down." Encouraged, Sarah pressed on. "Exactly. What if we created a safe space right here? A circle where we can share and understand each other? No judgments, just honesty." Emily squeezed her hand again. "Mom, that's amazing." Her small voice held a sparkle that filled Sarah's heart with warmth. The crowd began to murmur, uncertainty mixing with curiosity, like clouds parting for sun. Conversations sparked among familiar faces, doubts slowly morphing into possibilities. Martha stepped closer, her voice rising above the others. "I'd be willing to share. I have my own hidden fears." Janet's brow furrowed as she listened, thoughts visibly clashing within her. She was the pillar of community judgment, the one who had made quiet assumptions and held tightly to the past. Surprise flickered in her eyes, but something else too. Could it be hope? "Maybe we all can't forget what's happened," Janet finally said, her voice wavering like the flickering light above. "But if we open up, we might understand each other better." A collective sigh washed over the crowd, and Sarah felt an overwhelming rush of gratitude. She glanced at Jack. His eyes twinkled with approval. "Let us start right now," Sarah suggested, her heart racing with anticipation. "Whoever wants to share can. We could even start with me." Hands began to raise timidly, first one, then another. Faces transformed from skeptics into thoughtful listeners. A sense of community began to form, simpler and more honest than she had ever imagined, as voices started to fill the air with stories, ranging from unspeakable loss to moments of joy. Tears streamed down faces that once wore masks of suspicion. Each person unburdened themselves a little, the weight somehow lighter when shared. But then, in the midst of a heartfelt tale from a woman named Lisa, the door swung open, and a newcomer entered. A tall figure, shadowed but undeniably commanding, stepped into the room. The air shifted again, heavy, charged. Sarah's breath caught as she tried to make sense of the emotion that rushed over her. "Who's this?" came a whisper from the back, glancing nervously between newcomers and old friendships. Jack, sensing the tension, whispered to Sarah, "Everything okay?" But Sarah was lost in her thoughts. The intensity in the stranger's eyes held secrets of its own. What did they want? What story had they brought along? As Lisa's voice faltered, all eyes shifted to the newcomer. Would they add to the healing or bring more fears? Sarah felt the collective anticipation, the hope now mingled with fresh anxiety. There was no turning back now. She had opened the door for honesty, but who stood on the other side? And as the stranger moved forward, Sarah braced herself for the uncharted waters ahead. What new revelations would come to light, and how would they alter the fragile progress she had worked so hard to cultivate? The mood in the room shifted immediately, a tremor of uncertainty rippling through the crowd as the stranger stepped forward. His silhouette blocked the light until he moved into the soft glow of the overhead lamp. A rush of features revealed themselves, sharp, defined, yet softened by the vulnerability that rested in a pair of deep-set eyes. "Hi, everyone," he began, his voice low and gravelly yet warm. "I'm Lucas." The name seemed familiar, but she couldn't quite place it. "Lucas? From the harbor community?" Someone called from the back, recognition sparking life in the room. "Yes," he nodded, his gaze sweeping across faces. "I've heard about the challenges you're facing." The sincerity in his tone hung palpably in the air. I came here because I want to help. A silence fell over the crowd, mixed with astonishment and skepticism. Sarah felt her heart race as she took in the sight before her. Could this stranger truly offer something worthwhile? Or was he just another voice clamoring for attention? What do you mean? Emily piped up, her innocent curiosity pulling at Sarah's heart. Do you know our stories? Lucas hesitated for just a moment, as if weighing his words. I've seen people struggle. I've been there myself. The crowd leaned in, enticed by his honesty. I lost my sister to addiction. I've faced the grappling darkness of despair and felt the sting of regret. Coming here tonight wasn't easy. As the weight of his confession sank in, Sarah felt the walls around her heart begin to dissolve. A curtain of empathy was drawn, bridging the unknown with shared suffering. This was not just a story about someone else. It echoed deep within her own struggles and fears. I could feel the tension in this room before I even stepped inside, he continued, his eyes scanning the audience. I recognize that vulnerability is terrifying, but it can also be a birthplace for healing. I want to share the tools I've found through my journey, not for healing but to empower you all to be this community you deserve to be. Martha's hand shot up again and she almost shouted, so you're saying there's hope? Lucas smiled, the warmth from his presence radiating through the dimly lit room. Absolutely. Hope exists in every crack. It's what keeps us going, even when the road gets hard. I'm here to guide you, but you will also need to embrace it. Each word landed like a gentle caress on weary souls, igniting a fire behind weary eyes as people began to lean in. Questions soon danced in the air, weaving a tapestry of shared stories and experiences, each one heavier yet lighter than the last. But Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that something deeper was happening here. This wasn't only about healing, they were building a foundation. Trust was being forged in that space, not just out of desperation but in collective strength. I think we need to hear more, she urged, her voice rising above the hushed murmurs. What have you learned, Lucas? What changed you? He chuckled faintly, the sound filled with shadows. My transformation started when I realized that my pain could serve a purpose. I learned to lean on those around me and reconnect with my own humanity. That's what brought me to a place of strength. A longing cascaded through the room, pulling threads of connection tighter with each shared laugh and touch of understanding. But just as they began to forge ahead, pushing deeper into their newfound connection, the door creaked open again. Another figure stepped in, drenched in shadow but less commanding than Lucas. This newcomer caught Sarah's attention, pulling her focus just as she was about to unravel the heart of their conversation further. Who were they? Another layer of complexity or a fresh challenge? As whispers began to unfurl like ribbons of intrigue, Sarah braced herself once more. The bonds they had just begun to weave could face another storm. Would their emerging connection persevere? Or would it shatter? The moment stretched, palpable and thick with anticipation, and Sarah could only wonder what the room would reveal next. The newcomer stepped into the light, revealing a fragile frame clad in layers of old, worn clothing. A gust of cool air followed them in, stirring the room with a mix of apprehension and curiosity. Sarah squinted, trying to make out the person's features, but all she could see was a fall of tangled hair that veiled their face. Sorry to interrupt, the figure said, voice trembling but firm. I didn't mean to intrude. Lucas turned his gaze toward the new arrival, his expression shifting from surprise to something deeper, recognition? Compassion? Sarah felt the atmosphere in the room shift again, crackling with tension. Please come in, Lucas urged, stepping forward with an invitation. We'd love to hear from you. I don't know if I belong here, the newcomer stammered, glancing around the room as if searching for an escape route. I just wanted to see if I could help. I heard voices from outside. Emily, eager and unfettered in her innocence, beamed at the stranger. You definitely belong. There's always space for someone who wants to help. Sarah inhaled sharply, a wave of concern washing over her. She could see in this person's eyes a familiar pain, the same kind she bore. But could they find strength too? Why don't you tell us your name? Lucas encouraged gently, his voice a steady anchor in the whirlwind of emotions swirling around them. I'm Jamie, they finally replied, voice no longer shaking as if fortified by the welcoming presence. I'm just trying to figure things out, you know? My life is a mess. Welcome, Jamie, Lucas said. We all feel that way sometimes, but sharing your story could be what others need to hear. The room held its breath. It was strange how quickly they had formed a bond, almost instinctively. Yet, with every heartbeat, a part of Sarah worried. Would Jamie's story resonate, or would it bring their fragile circle crashing down? Jamie hesitated, then took a small step forward, as if crossing a threshold. I lost my brother last year. He was everything to me. Drugs took him away. I guess I thought if I came here, maybe I could find some healing and help others find it too. A hush blanketed the room. Sarah felt as if time had paused, the air thickening with shared grief. The raw vulnerability in Jamie's voice unfolded like delicate petals. She could see the emotion reflected in the faces around her, their glimmers of understanding, rekindling the connection that bound them. Me too, Martha whispered, tears spilling over cheekbones. My son, I understand. Then you're not alone, Lucas spoke, his tone bridging the gap between their stories. Your brother's memory can be a light for others. There's a way to turn this pain into purpose. As Jamie's gaze shifted toward Lucas, the shadows in their eyes began to lift just enough to let in a glimmer of hope. I don't even know how to start, Jamie admitted, the tremor returning to their voice. Together, Sarah said, surprising herself with the strength in her words. We start together. One story, one person at a time. Lucas can guide us. We can find healing as a group. People began to nod, a chorus of agreement rippling through the room. Connections sparked, hearts began to lift, and for the first time, Sarah felt that maybe they truly could build something meaningful together, from ashes to strength. But then, just as laughter and light began to fill the room, a raucous shout erupted from outside, a chaotic sound that stole the warmth. The sudden ruckus sent a shiver of apprehension through Sarah's spine. What now? She murmured, her eyes darting toward the door, heart racing with fear of interruptions once more. As the crowd turned, anticipation tinged with dread hung thick in the air. What had been seen as a sanctuary was suddenly punctured. Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that tonight was still far from over, and the real test of their bonds was about to begin. The shouts outside grew louder, echoing against the walls like a storm brewing. Sarah's heart raced, not just from anxiety, but from an instinct to protect this fragile moment they had just begun to weave together. The warmth in the room felt so delicate, like the first light of dawn breaking through heavy clouds. Would it be snuffed out by chaos? Maybe it's just kids playing, Jamie said, though their voice quivered. Or something worse, Martha added, her brow furrowed with concern. Lucas moved toward the door, a determined look in his eyes. I'll go check it out. Everyone stay put. The words were meant to be calming, but Sarah could hear the tension beneath them. Wait, Sarah called, stepping forward. What if we all go? We're stronger together. Lucas hesitated, glancing back at the group. The fire of connection they had lit together flickered, awareness of their shared vulnerability threading through them. All right, he finally agreed, nodding toward Jamie. Hold on tight, Jamie. We're not leaving anyone behind. A moment of unity settled over them as they stood shoulder to shoulder. An unbreakable line formed against uncertainty. Each person felt the gravity of the moment, the sense that they were crossing a threshold into something unknown as they moved toward the door. Sarah couldn't help but feel the weight of their collective stories resting on her shoulders. It was a heavy burden, yet it also felt like armor. They were a tapestry of grief and hope, woven together by shared experiences. How odd it was, she thought, that something so tragic could foster a bond so rich in possibility. Lucas pushed the door open slowly, revealing the chaos outside. A group of young people was gathered, shouting and pushing against each other. The sight sent a chill down Sarah's spine. They looked volatile, careening between anger and excitement. What's going on? Lucas called out over the noise, trying to be heard. Fight! 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 A voice yelled back, gleefully egging the others on, laughter mingling with the shouts. Hey! Jamie's voice rang through, surprising herself. Stop it! The crowd hesitated, turning their attention towards the newcomer. Felt as if time slowed. Faces twisted in confusion, ready to resume their ruckus. Jamie took a step forward, continuing with unexpected courage. Please, this isn't what we need. We just started to find hope. Inside, their words hung in the air, a lifeline thrown into chaotic waters. The brief silence was enveloping, filled with tension and uncertainty. Sarah felt her breath catch, caught between disbelief and admiration. Could Jamie channel their pain into something that could reach these strangers? The fight fizzled for a moment, and curiosity replaced aggression among the rowdy patrons. The crowd began to murmur, drawn to Jamie's vulnerability. It was like a spell, the way vulnerability can sometimes soothe a tempest. Please. Jamie pressed on, their voice steadier now. Hope isn't just for us. It's for everyone who feels lost. We know what that pain is like. Let us not tear each other apart. Let us build something instead. The words were meteoric in their gravitational pull, echoing through the hearts of those listening. For a heartbeat, Sarah felt a shift in the energy. Hesitation clung to the air, and sparks of understanding flickered amongst the young onlookers. But just as the potential for solidarity started to grow, a hand from the back pushed through the crowd, gripping Jamie's shoulder possessively. It was one of the loudest voices from before. What do you know about pain? You don't know us. With that, the tension snapped again, uncertainty rearing up like a giant. Sarah's heart thundered as she watched the scene unfold. Would this brave, raw moment of connection slip away? She felt the urgency of time push against her. Don't retreat, she whispered to herself, willing the words to reach Jamie, willing everyone to strive for unity instead of division while the moment still hung in the air, as fragile as ice on water. Would they find the words to unite, or would anger drown them all? Sarah's breath hitched as she waited, heart racing to see what would happen next. What would they choose in this very moment of decision? As the tension hung like a thick fog, Sarah could feel the collective heartbeat of the crowd vibrating around them, sticky with anticipation and fear. Jamie remained steadfast, gripped by the tension but unyielding in their truth. I do know pain, Jamie shouted, their voice cutting through the noise. I don't stand here as an outsider, I stand here as someone who has struggled and lost too much to remain silent. The crowd shifted, stunned and curious. Sarah's heart raced with admiration for the bravery Jamie displayed. Could this bold appeal reach even the most hardened souls? In that moment, the ruckus began to quiet. Doubt transformed into curiosity. Faces that had moments ago twisted in scorn began to soften, the enormity of Jamie's words echoing deeper than mere intentions. They offered a glimpse of shared humanity hidden beneath the chaos. Lucas took another step forward, adding his voice warm and steady. We can't tear each other apart. Look at what we've begun to build together. He gestured back toward the welcoming space they had created, rich with vulnerability and sincerity. We're better together. We can set aside our pasts and walk forward. Together. A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd, the raw honesty weaving its way into their hearts like a welcome breeze on a sweltering day. But then, the hand at Jamie's shoulder squeezed tighter, pulling them back into doubt. The harsh voice sneered, how can we trust that? Look around. Nothing ever changes. Sarah felt her determination swell as she instinctively stepped forward, her voice rising above the noise. Change doesn't happen overnight. It begins when we have the courage to speak and listen. We can't rewrite history, but we can choose how we face our futures. Let us nurture that hope together. And just like that, the air electrified. Sarah knew she wasn't merely addressing the crowd, but rallying them, drawing from the depths of her heart. Their stories entwined, their struggles and hopes echoing in the warm night air. Slowly, heads began to nod. Eyes met in understanding. Some of the young people began to inch closer, curiosity winning out over skepticism. Jamie caught this shift, their energy rapidly transforming from insecurity to defiance. We all have scars, but they can't define us. If we can share our pain, we can also share our strength. A group of teenagers looked at one another, whispered amongst themselves, and one finally spoke up. You're right. We can't keep living like this. We've been holding on to anger for too long. There's gotta be a better way. The words hit home like a bell tolling through the dark, resonating with those who had once felt isolated, now finding kindred spirits flickering between them. A soft but palpable eruption of agreement flooded the space. Sarah could see the shift. Smiles were breaking through. Faces once twisted in disbelief were beginning to light up with promise. It was as if a muted sunrise began to spill across the horizon. Let us build a bridge. Someone yelled from the back, the sentiment resonating like wildfire. Let us unite through sharing, not fighting. The voices grew in strength, a chorus reverberating and pulling one another closer like moths to a flame. The oppressive tension lifted, released into the air with every idea exchanged. Each personal story igniting the spirit of solidarity they yearned for. Sarah looked at Jamie and then Lucas, unity strengthening the bond as they stood together. She smiled widely, heart swelling, knowing they were breaking free of the weight from their pasts, crafting a vibrant future that belonged to them all. With every step back, Sarah felt lighter. With every word spoken in authenticity, she felt herself standing more firmly beside those she once thought would judge her. They were becoming pioneers of change, rebuilding a community infused with understanding. A moment unfolded before her, as the crowd began to disperse, not from disinterest but from a spark of companionship ignited in that warm embrace of shared journeys. "Thank you," Sarah called out, her voice full of warmth and sincerity, but already filled with hope about what was yet to come. "We have a lot of work to do, and we'll do it together." And with those words, the truth laid bare to rediscovering each other amid their shared stories of pain and triumph, an actual collective awakening. A celebration of togetherness. As Sarah stood with Jamie and Lucas amidst the gentle warmth of renewed camaraderie, she finally felt whole, erasing every lingering doubt. The night stretched ahead, promising illumination instead of shadows. Together, they could light the way forward. This was her change. This was their change. And carrying that first ray of hope inside her heart, Sarah knew they would not turn back. Now to you, reading this story, don't forget, true change starts from understanding and connection. So you need to subscribe now to not miss the next exclusive stories. This is the moment to show your support. No one should navigate life alone. Leave a like right now to feed the algorithm to spread those sparks of inspiration. And please, comment below your reactions and feelings about this ending. Your voice matters. Share your thoughts. Finally, share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation, because together, we can all overcome any darkness that threatens to overshadow our light. Don't wait not even one more second to share. Be the bridge that someone else may need to find their heart.